More than 100 yards in his debut for Elijah Mitchell. But is he already on the hot seat for the 49ers? That and more this week on the Football Guys Dynasty Show. Jordan, we are stepping into an ambiguous zone. Raheem Mostert lasted part of a quarter for the 49ers before now he is out for the season. So we have clarity on his situation. Trey Sermon was a surprise inactive. Where do you sit now with the 49ers running back depth chart that has been highly productive in the past?
The injuries with them, like, it just doesn't stop with the injuries to the San Francisco backfield. It's like a yearly continuous thing. It just goes on and on. I wonder what the deal with that. I'd be curious to know the whole backstory on that knee injury for Mostert. That's the first thing. I'm kind of boycotting Kyle Shanahan at this particular moment because he's not doing he's not acting in ways that I think we are particularly good at predicting, and that's a troublesome place.
He has you flummoxed and searching for words right now. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I covered San Francisco for Football Guys. Like, Sermon was the running back too, right? Like, that was what he was behind Mostert, and it never changed.
He still might have been though.
You think so?
Well, he doesn't play special teams. So if you use the logic that Raheem Mostert is healthy, we have confidence in him. He's our running back 1, and we just can't carry 4 running backs. If they need to use special teams for Hasty and Mitchell, it makes sense. I understand that. Now, if you just tell me they traded up for Sermon, and a few months later, well, he's no good, and he's not even eligible to be on our active roster, and we might begrudgingly put him there because we have no one else. We have Kerryon Johnson. We have the corpse of Kerryon Johnson, potentially, that we just put on the practice squad. But I expect him to be active. I expect him to emerge. Where are you in just the chip in a chair? Always have somebody in this backfield, but who's ever the cheapest? Because Mitchell was cheap a few weeks ago. He had his supporters. Hasty picked up plenty of shares because people weren't aggressive enough, in my opinion, when Gallman was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So exposure is important, I think, here. But the train on exposure to any 3 of these guys outside of maybe FFPC, maybe redraft circumstances, but Dynasty, I don't think there's really pick up that guy. That ship has already sailed for all of them so far.
Yeah. I don't think there's any leagues that any of them are available in. I'll say this. I sort of understand your idea about the special teams thing. Mitchell and Hasty both played 2 total special team snaps in the entire game. So okay. I don't.
So I guess that's not it. All right.
I maybe it is, but it just gives me a lot of. I mean, the same because this isn't a one-off though, right? Like this isn't a one-off. Like the Garoppolo thing's been pretty transparent the whole time. The Brandon Aiyuk thing, just not playing Brandon Aiyuk for reasons that don't appear readily accessible to anyone.
Well, they did get up by like 4 touchdowns. So the fact that the Lions came all the way back and actually had a chance because right. of onside kicks and playing prevent for right. a large part of the second half and just getting gutted on defense with 10 plus play drives,
right.
dinking down the field. I mean, it looked like the Patriots and Falcons in the Super Bowl all over again, of just like one team cannot get off the field, and then all of a sudden you need to do something and stiffen up, and you can't. Because
did you just comp Goff to Brady, by the way?
In a roundabout way. There's a way to use them in the same sentence.
Oh,
that
okay.
is possible.
All right. Okay.
There are similarities between them.
Yes, Brady beat Goff in the Super Bowl. That's how you would typically use it in the sentence.
Got it.
I think,
yeah. Can you use that in a sentence, please? Okay, so you are open to the possibility that Elijah Mitchell is the chosen one,
yes,
and that it's his job to lose,
right?
And he's going to see 15 plus touches a week until something changes,
right? And I'm also I think it's equally possible that Trey Sermon goes.
He gets 5 this next week, and Sermon goes for 2 touchdowns, and he's a workhorse.
Right. Because like I
did find Hasty getting like 1 or 2 touches quizzical.
Yeah.
Because my impression is I actually like him better as an all-around back than Mitchell. I think Mitchell has some limitations on things that he doesn't do all that well.
Yeah.
But he has the speed. He's kind of like Mostert in the sense that you give him a hole, he'll get through it.
Yeah.
He'll get through said defined hole, and he can go. And he did that exact thing on his touchdown. So
yeah. And I mean, listen, you shoot for that. You shoot for that running back spot, right? And who's to say that this doesn't change 3 or 4 more times? The problem with it that has me spooked right now is how are we going to predict it without further injury?
Well,
right?
what we saw last year is we saw basically every week 2 guys were lineup viable.
Right.
You may have preferred one, but like I started once or twice. I had ambiguous situations, and I was like, I'm going to start Jermichael Hasty. Now it worked out. Thank goodness. Fingers crossed. He got that short range touchdown, and he had a catch for 15 yards or something. So it worked out okay. It didn't matter really, but the point is, I expected better when it was like, oh, Sermon's inactive. Like I had Sermon in a couple flexes where I just had some ambiguity, but I figure they're going to get up big. They're going to have a bunch of running back touches, and it's going to work out. But this has been historically a team where you say there's enough on the bone there that you can start 2 guys, the second one in your flex. And I do think we're going to be in that setting.
Assuming you can figure out who the 2 guys are, which I'm not sure. Like, good luck in week 2 figuring that out. I mean, I think you have to say one of them's Mitchell, but would it shock? I mean, it would be like we're kind of at the point of like the Patriots right now, right? Where it was like, hey, Harris could come in and rush the ball 23 times, or it could be Ramondre Stevenson, and neither one of us would have been surprised, right? I mean, so I don't like. Listen, I thought I had a good beat on this one.
You sound like 1 week into the season, you're already kind of like befuddled. That you're just like, it's just this week 1 hit me like a freight train. You're just like, I may have some concussion-like symptoms from some of the things I've seen.
It's not even that week 1 hit me like a freight train. Like I think we had some pretty good beats on stuff. Like we got some really good information. Yeah. It's this situation. It's the San Francisco. It's Aiyuk and it's Sermon.
Aiyuk wasn't healthy. They got up by big. Why would you play him? They didn't need him.
Well, then why would you play him at all? Right? Like
I watched. He was out there running half-speed routes. So I don't know what the disconnect between, like, was he doing that to protect himself? Well, the coaches should have known that and had somebody else out there. So I don't know. Was he just roping open and trying to draw coverage? I don't know. But watching the game itself, I was not surprised after the fact, after knowing that he pretty much put up a bagel and, just was a non-factor completely. And then they got up big. Watching him, it didn't look like he was even expecting any targets, is what I would say. The impression I got from him watching him run routes, because I knew what's going on here. I know he played, but he didn't really do anything. That was my impression. But like you said, there's some stuff going on with the 49ers. Let's see, how this. So is your action plan no action right now in the backfield? If you have Hasty, if you have Mitchell, if you have Sermon, is it, I'm glad I have somebody. Let's see how this works out. And I'm not interested in really selling Mitchell right now. If someone comes offering a future first for Sermon, no, I'm just going to hold tight and see what happens here. Like, are you pretty much inactivity inertia?
I mean, I think if you if you got a first for Mitchell, you do it, would sort of be my thought.
I don't know if that's possible, though. I think it's going to take a couple more games of proving that he actually is the number 1.
Okay.
Typically. I think it's going to take more than just that one data point.
Yeah.
They need to see Sermon playing behind him sturdily. I think that's what most people will need to see.
But if you could do it right now, wouldn't you do that and not have to worry about that? Like, wouldn't you just take the profit?
In a heartbeat.
Just take the profit.
A later day 3 guy that got production right away, and someone that was like a 4th round rookie pick or a waiver pickup that has an intriguing profile of speed, but wasn't overly productive in college. I mean, he was playing behind, if memory serves, Trey Ragas on that Louisiana Lafayette team. So could Shanahan make a lot of guys productive? Yes. But to say that he's unequivocally better than Hasty, he's better than Sermon, he's going to get every tiebreaker opportunity over those guys, and he's going to stay healthy, that's the always thing we always have to put in there. If he gets hurt this week, what are his future opportunities look like? And also, let's remember Jeff Wilson. He's not on season-ending IR. Now, our good Dr. Gene Bramall, don't be surprised if he's not back the first week he's eligible. there are longer standing things that could be going on with Jeff Wilson. So I think a lot of people assume, just like Mike Thomas, oh, he'll be back. He'll be back right when he's eligible. Doesn't always work that way with some of these more complicated things that are like half a season or more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if I could I'll actually outline this. This might be lower than you're willing to go. I'm willing to go to a running back talent I trust, even if they are a backup or a 1B right now, and a second over Elijah Mitchell.
Is that Mostert? Is that Dylan? Is that or a lower?
Yeah, Dylan, Madison, Pollard.
Sorry, I meant Madison. That
would be pie in the sky. I would have included, let's say we still had Dobbins and Edwards. Edwards would have qualified. That was like a 3rd round valuation for folks in the offseason. So a running back like that profile plus a second, I would get out today. A first is ideal, but I think if you can pivot to another backfield with a guy that I think has more staying power potential and more of a profile in the NFL or the draft or something, that I like. And I think that's the only thing feasible. I'd be very interested to see if a first gets taken down by somebody with Mitchell this week. Because I think there's a lot of variable with Sermon being, supposedly and projected to be activated. I don't even know who else they would activate if Sermon stays down. I mean, that is basically just like throwing dirty pond water on your own pick. We traded up for him. We're already done. We're done. Then why did he make the roster then?
Yeah, it's like the Joe Williams nightmare scenario with a guy we like. You know what I mean?
Joe Williams nightmare. That's right. That's right. That's a good one. Joe Williams. We love him. And people are drafting him in the 2nd round, I believe, of rookie drafts. And it's like, oh no. That's just one of those, oh no.
We did it to ourselves.
Exactly. Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 70 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. I want to remind you it's in season, which means the League Dominator app for Football Guys is where you want to be. It's how you manage your teams. You sync them all. It's got your rosters. It's got the waiver wire recommendations. You can do all this from the app itself. There's an online version if you're a subscriber at Football Guys. And all it's going to do is bring those custom projections in, and it feeds to all the decisions with waiver wires, lineups that you need to make on a weekly basis with your Dynasty teams. Also can recommend trades, all of that, and it syncs every single week, or you can manually sync it after the waiver period. Again, it's a no-brainer app if you're not a subscriber. If you are a subscriber, the app is great on your mobile device, but you can also just get the online version that I use every single week with your Football Guys, all-pro or season-long subscriptions. And the other running back depth chart, the other moving piece, which actually turned out a little different in game, which was one of the best games. Jordan texted me about 5 times about Derek Carr, as the Raiders and Ravens were going on. I don't ever every single week. I don't necessarily watch every play of the Monday night game and replay. I watch this one because this was an epic game, and you don't always get them. Sometimes you get some stinkers, but man, what a game going back and forth. You got to see a little bit of everything between run games, pass games, comebacks, lead changes, big kick. I didn't hear a lot, but that kick heard around the world. What, 55 yards to tie it? Unbelievable. So, but the moving piece here was Tyson Williams. What were we going to see from him? And really, it was a tale of two halves because he started out as a workhorse, turned into a lot more Latavius Murray as the game progressed. And with Williams, that touchdown run, he only saw 9 carries. So what was your takeaway from how that depth chart worked out throughout the game and what's ahead for Baltimore?
Have you had any success selling Tyson Williams for a first recently, Chad?
Nope.
The
people don't like it when you suggest that, by the way.
Apparently, holy smokes. There is a listen. I think there was some schematic things. A Mr. Tape study, but I found some data to suggest that Tyson Williams a lot more gap scheme than zone scheme. That's the only thing I can really point to of why things changed in the second half from him to Murray. That's the only apparent difference. So I don't know if there's a schematic thing there that's different between the two. I'll be interested to catch up with Matt Waldman this week and ask him about that specifically. But that's the only thing that really jumped out to me about why they were different. Tyson Williams, I mean, we are a Latavius Murray friendly podcast, and I think Tyson Williams looked much better, and he outperformed him in virtually every facet. So I'm interested to see if there's something schematic going on there. And this is another one that like he could be the best guy, and we could with Le'Veon Bell looming, with Devonta Freeman looming, with Latavius there, we might never feel great about it, right? And that's kind of what you get with this pedigree.
Those three
Right.
guys are a lot of NFL, been there, done that, multiple seasons, 5+ seasons for all of them of being productive, relevant, 1A, 1B, strong running backs in the NFL. Tyson Williams has one game.
Right.
So, and again, I know people say pedigree doesn't matter, but it sure buys you time. If Williams was a round 3 pick, if he was Trey Sermon, if we just superimpose those two different players, he would have a heck of a better chance to emerge, keep a job, hold those guys at bay. Heck, we might have been in a situation where those injuries previously for Baltimore, they wouldn't have added so many veterans if he was a higher pedigree guy. Could be the exact same player on the field, but it matters. It just matters. That's how it is. You know, I mean, anytime you start doing analysis on fantasy football or the draft and predictability and outcomes and all this, it matters. I mean, there might be different lines at different positions, like, oh, all day 2 is the same, you know, pretty much at this position, or, you know, round 4 is a little different than the rest of day 3, or, you know, different parts of round 1 are different. Like, you might think like that, but generally higher is better. Higher is better. It really is that simple sometimes. And that's why, hey, Sony Michel, don't be surprised he's still in the NFL. Don't be surprised if he's the lead back for the Rams at some point in the season. Why? First round picks. They linger. They impact. I mean, Tavon Austin, I checked. Well, he's still in the NFL. Tavon Austin is still in the NFL. Kevin White, who a lot of Dynasty GMs would not acknowledge his existence for the past 3 years, got a look this offseason. Josh Doxson got a look. You get more chances. It's just the way it goes. But yeah, Latavius Murray, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all. He got more touches this past week. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets more looks again this week. Yeah. Le'Veon Bell being active. If you're Tyson Williams, all these are bad things. These are all bad things. So, and he looked fine. There's no, I mean, again, good feet, big back, can break a tackle. But one thing we've talked about online or offline, probably both, is that this Ravens backfield targets are still at a premium. So we can be talking all about who's going to get the most carries, but there's not really a 50 reception guy here. There might be a 30 reception guy here. And that's a huge hindrance for projecting a guy to be top 10 or top 15 and truly mattering in fantasy. So just know that even if you quote unquote get it right, of like, oh, I got some guy off the waiver wire, or I, didn't make a trade and didn't sell him, the odds of getting that just with this system are not overly high.
Yeah,
getting it right.
They're looming too, right? Like Dobbins and Edwards, like they're back. They're not.
Yeah,
going,
this is a redraft sort of viewpoint you need to have.
Correct.
So, I mean, Latavius Murray wanted to get, I mean, is he going to be relevant in 2022? That's a question mark. It's definitely a question mark. Le'Veon Bell, big question mark. I think Devonta Freeman, biggest question mark. He's probably not in the NFL next year. He might not be in the NFL in October. So, and Tyson Williams, probably going to be in the NFL. But to what degree? Is he going to have to go back to needing injury? He might need an injury right now. So how does this differ than Elijah Mitchell and some of the things we talked about with the 49ers? The brass tacks of, if Murray, he's probably not out there. He was picked up a lot the past couple weeks, even if he was with the Saints drop. But what are you thinking about Tyson Williams? Would you exit for any second? Would you be trying to flip to a different type of running back or a different position? Or are you just holding and saying, I got a guy, he looked pretty good, it could still break his way?
I think it could still break his way. I would, if I could get a second, I'd probably do it. I wouldn't bail for less than that, because you got to remember too that like there's a chance it goes his way. Like there is a chance that it works out. And really what you're competing against is 3 guys that are frankly on the wrong side of 30, right? I don't know how old. I don't know how old
Freeman is 30 in his soul. Freeman's 30 in his soul. And I think Bell's months away, but they're close. Yeah,
they're
workload-wise, they're 30-year-old running backs.
Right. They're Bell might be like a 35-year-old running back workload-wise, but they're on the wrong side of that arc. And so if you say like, all right, collectively the odds aren't great. Collectively the odds are probably good that someone's going to put together some competition for Tyson Williams, but there's a chance that he's just the better player. And frankly, he did that to Latavius Murray, and the other two guys were out of the NFL, right? So, like, there is still that opportunity. And you put him next to Lamar Jackson in a scheme that's a really good scheme. Like you saw, again, this is partially, I think, a skill, but I think there's reason to wonder if Lamar Jackson has an impact on this. But J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards were two of the top three guys in terms of rushing yards over expectation last year. Lamar Jackson, we probably can't measure how much of an impact that is, but he's probably having an impact on that number, right? It's too coincidental for that not to be true. And
I say it all the time. The mobile quarterback coming out the backside holds linebackers, holds backside coverage. It opens the hole. It just does.
Right. So, and that's something we probably don't know the effect of, but it looks like that it does in some way, shape, or form. So if Tyson Williams is going to get the benefit of that, we sort of know how all that works. So I think that there's upside for him here in terms of, like, I think he could win this job. The question is ultimately, like, how are you ever going to feel comfortable week to week? Could you go, could you put him in a bigger package and try and extract a first type valuation for him? You might not necessarily get the face value of the pick, but you might get some sort of valuation like that. If he has a big game or something like that coming up, I don't think that that's necessarily that far off.
Yeah, and I would remind folks that our vantage point is we think of it in terms of our leagues. Like, if we had Tyson Williams, what does that look like? Well, he would just blend into a lot of running backs we have. So the likelihood that we need him, the likelihood that he's not an obvious starter probably on our collective teams, if I were to take a guess. So we're coming from the vantage point of being robust and heavy at running back with our roster allocation, which means when you see opportunities to churn one for a pick that we view as meaningful or a good return or just a good tactical play, we're going to utilize that. And just because we'll find the next guy, like we might be picking up Jeremy McNichols off the waiver wire this week for $1. And where it's just like, well, we got another chance. We got another chance to get the next Tyson Williams, which is someone that pops up with situation and good things happening around him with injuries or opportunities. So that's where we're coming from. So we've got certain guys that we're probably more likely to hold, and start and utilize. But if you're not in that grouping, the flip is an absolute part of the toolbox. So just know that that's where we're coming from. If you're, if you have 4 or 5 running backs on your team total, you're in a different situation, that you don't have a lot of chances to benefit from injury and have these guys pop up. So Willliams, you got right. And you're like, well, I only have 1 or 2 chances. Willliams was one of them. I got, maybe some guy, maybe I got Carlos Hyde and, maybe one other guy. You don't have a lot of chances. We might have 10 backups across the NFL, which means we have a lot of interest in a guy that tweaks a hammy and a guy that goes on short-term IR, because there's a good chance that 5-10 times around our leagues, all of a sudden we have the next guy, and that we directly benefit. So we're coming from a little bit vantage point. I just wanted to point that out for new listeners or folks that haven't just kind of heard our general team composition, which does affect kind of how we view players like this.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about some dynasty trading. And it's always interesting, after week 1, I think next week we're going to get to see a lot more trading, actually even 2-3 days from now, because frankly, it's Tuesday night and there hasn't been a lot of trading. I saw a couple this week on the Footballguys Dynasty Trades forum over there at the Shark Pool. And we'll start with there. We have Corey Davis for a 22 second. So that's probably not going to go well. It's not going to play well. It's probably going to be like playing a rap song in church. That's not really appropriate in this venue, because we're 2 of the bigger Corey Davis fans. Week 1 didn't surprise us. The fact that he got paid in free agency didn't surprise us. The high market share in the preseason didn't surprise us. So here we are. I don't think either one of us is selling for a second.
Nope. I'd buy for a second. And I mean, like, how many more things do we need to know, right? Like, how many more, it's like you keep getting signs on the side of the road, like traffic jam upcoming, traffic jam upcoming, traffic jam upcoming. And then you get up there and there's a traffic jam. Like, surprise, surprise. Like, we have seen that. Like, that has gone on all off season, right? And so everyone wants to look for Elijah Moore because, like, that's the
The new flashy
sexy
name.
and appealing thing to do, but ultimately, like we know Corey Davis is really good, right? We know that from just looking at his stats and looking at all that stuff. It has totally been a volume consideration, and now like it could be
volume might not be a problem.
Yeah, just keep throwing him the ball, right?
And I will remind folks that, looking at something as basic as quarterback level and where you sit on the depth chart, I do a lot of historical study on that. And a reminder that even if Zach Wilson is a bottom 8 fantasy quarterback, bottom 8, that the average wide receiver 1 over the years in that situation is wide receiver 34, the average one. So, and that's assuming Wilson is pretty horrible and dreadful. So I think he could be tier 3, which would be 17 through 24. I think that's possible for Zach Wilson. Mm-hmm. He showed some promise. He's willing to air it out. He's going to make some mistakes. He's going to take sacks. He's going to do all those rookie things. But man, it zooms up to wide receiver 26 on average. So if Davis is better than average, then could he be top 24? Could he be top 18? All these things are in play for him. And he was on like wreckage watch, dynasty wise, of like categorical bust. Just took him a while. He was open a lot in Tennessee. Guy can run a route. Just, you got to get the ball at some point. And you know what? I think Zach Wilson's going to get him the ball. So good signs there. Would you sell for a first? Is that an obvious yes or no?
It's not an obvious yes to me. It's not an obvious yes.
Because Corey Davis lets you keep it lean and mean, right? I mean, he was probably your wide receiver 4 or 5 or something coming into the season. If he locks that down for you, that means during... if you had lots of questions with Corey Davis during the bye weeks, you still might be open to maybe picking a guy up or streaming a guy or who knows. But he actually helps you now. He makes you leaner and meaner, with one extra guy now, feeling good about it for lineup positions.
Absolutely. And he was like one of the last guys you felt good about in startup drafts. Like he was one of the last ones. Like it was like him
Brandon Cooks. Yeah.
Right.
In that zone,
surprise,
where you
surprise.
say, if I'm going to take one more guy, surprise. Both. Did you see Brandon Cooks' monster? Like he had this high point between two guys. That guy has the heart of a lion. I actually went to one, an old football card. I turned it over. I was like, you know what? He is below 6 feet tall. He just plays big. Wow, Brandon Cooks. And he's younger than everybody thinks too.
Yeah,
keep bashing out.
That's what happens when you.
I don't know if anybody else in the NFL has been. I don't know if any other, like, we have to go back to Herschel Walker for like a non-quarterback to be traded for as many first-round picks in his career as Brandon Cooks. Man, that guy is valued, and he's still like 27, maybe 28. But man, guy can still play. Watch out. All right, we got another one here.
He came out when he was 20, right? Well, he was real young.
Yeah, 20.9. Couldn't drink on his NFL debut for the Saints 5 teams ago. We've got, I would love to do a roundtable with all the teams, all the coaches that moved on from Brandon Cooks. And I would just like to say, so bad guy? Did he eat all the Doritos in the vending machine? Like, what was the deal here? Did he take extra towels like at the gym? Like, what was this?
He didn't flush. So.
He did too many upper deckers. There was a situation with the cleaning crew just complained. It was an issue, especially on road games. All right, FFPC, Cam Akers, Brandon Aiyuk, and a first. So let's see the haul here. Aaron Jones and Chase Claypool.
Wow.
Not a good collective week 1, I will say, for this package. Total points about 15 for these 4 players combined.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because you could say, like, let's just set aside Aiyuk and Claypool for a second. Sure. Is the return of Akers and a first appropriate for Aaron Jones? Like, I think that's probably right. And then it's a matter of, like, I think I take the Aaron Jones side of that too. And if we think that, the question then becomes is the difference between Claypool and Aiyuk enough to stop you from doing the deal? And to me, the answer is no. So I would take the Aaron Jones side.
Okay. Yeah, I think globally, the Packers are the biggest like regression from week 1. What we saw and the opponent, and you know who they got this week?
Detroit at home.
Detroit at home, and you've got a team.
Isn't it on Monday night too?
I don't know. All sorts of pissed off.
You don't do schedules, Chad.
Yeah, if you saw some of the looks Aaron Rodgers had on the sidelines and after some of these plays, he is going to absolutely torch.
Right.
Like, and Detroit had one of their notable defensive backs injured too. So they are. This is this is what we categorize as a bad spot. If you're a Detroit defense, this is not what you want. You gave up like
game. Yeah.
33 points at the half to the 49ers. You lose guys, and now you've got a Packers team that got absolutely trounced coming into the game. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, would you put the over-under at 3.75 passing touchdowns?
Yeah.
Aaron Jones over under 130 total yards. This is going to be, yeah.
It's on Monday night. They're 10.5 point favorite right now, it looks like. And
you might want to bump that up to about 12 or 13.
Yeah, this could be one of those where it's like, where Rodgers goes like 24 for 27 and 5 touchdowns and like,
might be a
380 yards. Like
it might be a Jameis Winston like stat line. We'll start saying that. The 20 passes, 5 touchdowns.
Right. This could be a
Rodgers
Dylan
is
special.
familiar with those. Our biggest quibble with Rodgers over the years was lack of volume, not lack of touchdowns. We want him to throw more passes, to throw even more touchdowns. Right. So yeah, I think Adams, all the requisite pieces. I actually think AJ Dillon is a decent flex play, this coming week, just because they're going to roll it up. Like Aaron Jones might not play after the first 2.5 quarters. It might be one of those settings. We might actually see some Kylan Hill. And not in a bad way, like we saw in week 1, where there's nothing else going on in that game. But yeah, I agree with you. Jones is a buy. Like I saw people selling relatively low. They locked him in. He's going to be the lead back this year outside of injury. And I know Rodgers probably not there next year, likely not there. But Jones, expected starter next year. I know it's a bigger contract, but 2 years looks pretty solid from that contract.
Yeah.
And Claypool has a dominant potential profile and a quality career start. Right. All right, we've got Joe Mixon straight up for Justin Jefferson. Okay. And I guess all the applicable Jordan rules and comments about Justin Jefferson, which is hard to replace that guy from a dynasty.
The number 1 wide receiver in dynasty. So you just, and Mixon
is more replaceable. Yeah. Right. I will say he had a nice week 1 and he's going to be a workhorse. And this is probably going to be his best season ever. But he's also
knock on wood, Chad. Knock on wood. It's week 1. Let's keep him healthy.
Yeah.
Let's bubble wrap him. We like.
Well, outside of injury, I think on a per game basis, this is going to be his best year. He's going to have the best opportunity to catch. I mean, he should, if that happens and he parlays this into something bigger, he should send a nice donation to whatever charity Giovanni Bernard wants for not being there anymore, because we used him and frankly, he was a big hindrance to him. Also, do you buy the Rojo week 2 starter and like it's just gonna flip flop like just like that?
By buy, do you mean sell him for a second and get him off the roster that I have mine? Yes, I would absolutely do that.
I'll believe it when I see it. When it actually occurs, when he doubles up Fournette and snaps, I'll believe it.
Who cares? By the way, like he runs no passing routes. Right, like what
Fournette is viable 2-way,
right, exactly. Like
you become predictable,
and with Rojo, like you have the problem with him is like even if you say like, all right, we're gonna give him goal line. Well, you've got AB, you've got Godwin, you've got Mike Evans, you've got one of the best goal line receivers of all time in Gronk, right? Like you've got. And they throw a ton down there, right? So like all of these things, you're looking at it, you're like, you don't even have, you're drawing dead with him.
Well, what's the logic of Jones over Fournette? Because Fournette is also a bigger back. Fournette offers plenty in the passing game. He's a more seasoned player that I'm sure on 3rd and 6 with the blitz coming, does Brady trust Fournette or Jones? I don't even know if it takes Friday night and a couple of drinks to ask him that question to get clarity. I think he would just say Fournette. Right. It's rather obvious and honestly, that's one of the most important questions.
Yeah.
Right? Whoever he wants back there. If he wanted Keyshawn Vaughn back there, that's probably what would happen.
Yeah.
In short order. Because if Jones misses one blocking assignment, that's it. Just like you saw him dejected after the fumble. Like you can't accept fumbles. You can't accept missed pass pro assignments. That's the two things. Because this offense is too good to mess up. Like Ty Montgomery, right? You can't return it out of the end zone. That would be like Ronald Jones returning it out of the end zone. Okay, we got one more here. This is a team in rebuild. Trading Clyde Edwards-Helaire for a 22 first. It's their own pick that they previously traded away, and they said they might tank, so there's a good potential it ends up being high.
I'd wonder, like, I'd want to know the specifics, and I think it's important, we preach know your rules and that sort of thing. I think it is important to know if it is going to be is this a playoff situation? Is this an FFPC situation where you've got to win in the playoffs?
This is just if it's potential points
You're
or it's
bad.
record or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. They're going to be bad. Like, they basically alluded it's going to be 101 to 103.
Okay. I'd probably do it. I'd probably do it.
Okay.
I'd reset the clock.
Is Edwards-Helaire, is he a reset the clock player? One game into year 2?
No, but if you know that it's going to be like a top couple pick situation, like if you know that, I'd probably do it just because it's more liquid and you give yourself more options. Like, this isn't I'm bailing on Clyde Edwards-Helaire type situation. This is just
mainly because the pick is projected so high.
Right. And you've got a lot of flexibility. Like, you can, if it's 101, like, you could move to, you
could trade down and get class. 3 first for it potentially. Yeah.
Correct. And in the right class, like, you could go 101 to 104 and get Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that deal. You know what I mean? Like, that gap's not, that gap is extractable.
Or you can get the guy that is discounted, that has a profile you like. So all of a sudden, maybe it is a flat tier. And you also might get a look at a round 1 running back that you like more, or is now 21 years old, or, that fits better with, I drafted him in 22, and instead of being a 3rd-year player with Edwards-Helaire, and it's like, I kind of wonder what the upside is here, now I got a 21-year-old running back that similar pedigree, and I, like him better, and he aligns better because I'm not competing in 22 either. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I see your angle. All right, let's go to some quotes from the Footballguys Dynasty Forum. That's where we take these from. If you want to be included in the show, say something saucy on there, commenting about a trade, a team direction, a strategy. Here we go. On upside alone, I'd say DJ Chark is worth a 23 first.
I don't think so. I didn't watch that game. Do you have any, like, he was targeted a ton and didn't catch very many balls? Was there something going on in terms of, like, miscommunications that I just didn't see?
The thing that was going on is Marvin Jones is better, and Chenault is going to be utilized more in the shorter and more projectable, catchable target range. That's what's going on. Marvin Jones is better down the field. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. So Chark for a first is like,
do you take the pick?
If they're not an absolute core level wide receiver, take the pick and move on. Just take the first. Could turn out to be high. If it turns out to be 111, you're still fine. It's okay. You'll still be good. And this one I thought was interesting. Moral of the story is don't use trade calculators. I didn't even see the 17 messages that it was responding to over the course of the last few days. But in general, the moral of the story is don't use them.
This is like when you set me up to, like, become the black sheep of the Dynasty fantasy football community and be, like, ostracized. You do one of these things to me.
Get on the couch. Do we need Sigmund Bloom here? Get on the couch, lay down, get comfortable, Jordan, and share your feelings.
My problem with Dynasty trade calculators is generally, not every one of them, but generally, is you don't know what they are solving for. Okay, so I want
hypothesis and solution. What are you hoping to solve exactly? What's the question you are answering?
Correct. What are you telling? What does this number mean? Some of them have numbers that I don't know what they mean. Some of them, and I've seen people cite them. I've seen, but I know some of them, right? Like there's other ones that I know, hey, you're purely solving for market value. That's a useful thing to know. Again, how much do I weight that is a different story. Some are yours goes towards production, right? So, I mean, that is something that, to me, that's how my mind works, is try and solve for production, because you can't control anything else. You can kind of control the productive profiles. So that's how I view the world in terms of those particular profiles. That makes a lot of sense to me. What I would caution people on is when you just look at the values and say, oh, look, this one's more valuable. Well, what's it valuable for? Are you trying to predict market value? Are you trying to current production, future market value, right? Because those things are very
because just to say one thing about that. So let's use the two examples. So if one is solving for market value, if that is the driver of what the solution to the question is, then you're going to get questions regarding, well, this player really helps me in my lineup right now.
correct.
Like, and I have a black hole at this position. So you're going to get questions regarding, well, this player's super productive. Why are they not? Well, that's because they were going around 12 of the startup draft. That's like Corey Davis. Well, Corey Davis was going late in the startup draft. Well, his value is based on that. And when you're in October, the market value stuff gets really, really fuzzy because no one's doing startup drafts. It's not all easy like June.
Right.
So when it gets static, those are great. Now the other side is if you're solving for production, then it's like, well, but you're telling me to do this for this player. Well, I'm if you're solving for production, that means you kind of need to use your best judgment on what does the market tell you. Well, and I always say, who's the hot player here? Like if you're selling a hot player for a not hot player, even though you feel like you're getting the better end of it, it doesn't mean you can't get more. If you're selling the hot guy, expect the world. Start with the world, and then maybe you move down to the moon, and then you move down to like selling for Australia, and then a small city. Like you work your way downward, but you got to know when you're selling the sizzle. So either way, and I do think if you try to blend those together, it gets really complicated. Really complicated. And it's almost like, if you start asking 500 people their thoughts and you're like, but this guy's high on this guy's high on this other guy, like then everything whitewashes together and everybody's a sleeper, as my joke goes.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. If you try to put everything into one number, then all of a sudden the number becomes relatively meaningless because it's trying to because everybody has some positive stuff going on. It's kind of like, I love sugar. Let's put sugar in the recipe. I love salt. Let's put salt in the recipe. I love molasses. Let's put that in there. Oh, I love, I love cucumbers. Let's put that. Like all of a sudden you put a bunch of stuff in there that you like and it tastes horrible.
And it's cement, right?
Like a pizza milkshake. Like it sounds. I love milkshakes. I love pizza. That's horrible. Don't do it. Don't try this at home. So that's the idea behind trade calculators. Is you have to be A, know what it's solving for, and B, like hopefully that aligns with what you want to solve for. So if the market value is important for you, then know that use market value to buy production when needed. Because sometimes you have market value, but you don't have production and you need production. Likewise, production matters, but if you're in a full rebuild, production matters less. So maybe, so getting some potential future market value matters more so than this guy's going to be projectable as a starter for me right now. That might not matter to you. So just know that going in. All right. I think most folks see 2 years out as lesser in value regarding like rookie picks or maybe trajectory for production, things like that.
I think we're pretty bad at predicting, generally speaking, we're pretty bad at predicting production that far out. It's a long time. And, people have a lot of way overconfidence in terms of projecting that stuff. So there's not, you said this earlier about if you could take a first for a wide receiver, you lean towards doing it. There's not a lot that I wouldn't take a future first for, right? Like hey, if you get straight up for this wide receiver, you take a future first. Like there's not a lot of players because like it gives you options that the receiver might not give you. Right. It gives you the option that it's really high or those sorts of things. And it gives you that flexibility, right, to address the unknown. So I do think like I have caution about projecting multiple years out. And this is like they have that curve about like knowledge and like certainty and like those sorts of things. Like if you don't know much, you tend to sound very confident. And if you know kind of like if you're on the developing curve of it, you have a lot of uncertainty. And then at some point in like the expertise level, you start to track up, but you never sort of get back to that level of confidence. Like that's in the range of, as we sort of look at these things, like it's very tough to project that long-term value. And so I sort of fall, I don't know a lot with a lot of players because there's just a ton of uncertainty with these players. The more you look at profiles and study profiles. So the value of those future picks, they tend to get you further just because they give you liquidity, they give you options that you might not know you need, right? It gives you the ability to trade for a DePress Watson profile or whoever the next person is, all those sorts of things, which I'm constantly trying to do. So those are all options that I think like I like the picks a couple of years out, and I'll take them just because like it gives me options and it gives me outs.
Yeah, and we say it all the time, but it doesn't mean you necessarily do it, which is you can trade that pick for a player. At any point in time, you don't have to wait 2 years, select a player, on their developmental curve, and then someday they are a starter for you in your lineup 3 years from now, 4 years from now. That doesn't have to be what happens with that pick. It could be what happens with that pick, but you can always trade that pick for a player. All right,
the
last one here.
Dunning-Kruger effect. Thanks, Rob, on YouTube.
I'm not sure Terry McLaurin will be worth more than T. Higgins by Halloween.
I'm not sure of that. I mean, I think Terry McLaurin's probably the better bet, but they're probably pretty close. So, there's, you don't know how Heineke's going to play. Like, McLaurin could be one of these guys that's kind of in quarterback purgatory. Like, he's got early stages of Allen Robinson written all over his dynasty resume. So I don't know, and they don't have a clear out at any point in terms of how they're going to get one.
Right, because they're probably not going to be bad enough to be super high in the draft. Now, who knows how the season goes? It could be quarterback off the rails again, and Alex Smith isn't around to quote unquote save them, which he didn't last year. But yeah, and they've improved around him. Like, he had a pretty clean run. He had Logan Thomas be a surprise last year, but now Logan Thomas, they have more belief in him. He's another year into confidence curve with that team and having a role. Curtis Samuel is out, so that benefits McLaurin in the short term here. He's had a lot of breaks situationally outside of quarterback in terms of competition for targets. So if competition for targets gets higher, I was a little down on McLaurin this year just because I thought targets were going to become more a premium. And yes, quarterback was going to improve, but now we're seeing maybe it won't be. We might be on to Kyle Allen before we know it. And we might be on to guys like Josh Johnson and whoever else gets put into that ecosystem that they pretty much got down to that point last year could be a repeat. So just be careful because, hey, if it's week 8 and they're on QB 3 or 4, courtesy red phone call in the lobby of the airport there. Don't be surprised. Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, Jordan? We covered a lot, but you know what? Week 1 also hit us a lot. Any player that you want to give a shout out for a take here from week 1?
I feel better about about this whole week after talking with you for 45 minutes or so. Like, I was peeved about the whole shit. Yeah, it's the whole Shanahan thing. It's just it's cathartic. I'll say, like, I think just constantly churning and it can be tough. Like, it can be really, really tough to do this, but I think especially early on in the season, that 11:30 to 1 o'clock window, it's really important because you can get some key information there in those early inactive. So we knew like Moss was inactive. We knew, I believe that was the time we knew Sermon was inactive too, if memory. I think that was an early start. There was one other one that was an early inactive that we knew. And as you sort of watch those, like, you can sort of amp up. So like, I went and just added Breida, right? I added within 4 minutes. I think I got from, 10% to 33% or whatever. Like, it was very quick in terms of just amping it up, and you're just sort of leveraging that back. If you can do that, right? If you can really focus in that window and sort of make those things, it's more of an early season effect too. I think like maybe week 1's the only time that really, really happens where you get a lot of uncertainty answered. But pay really close attention in that window because it'll give you stuff. Like, we knew stuff about Jamal Williams, right? We knew Jamal Williams was going to be a starter or thought to be a starter, have a heavy workload because of some Swift injury stuff. So like, you could get him in your lineup, right? And if you're sort of playing in one of these things where you are playing a lot of different guys at running back, which is something that you talked about, we advocate for, is you're trying to play a ton of guys, you're trying to take advantage of those matchups. Like, if you are sort of plugged in at that time, you get critical information, you can make a move. So I just think really focusing at that time is really, really important.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And yeah, when those inactives come, please utilize, I think every single platform that hosts leagues has some function where you can search all your leagues. And even if it's not super quick to go right to the page to add them, you at least quickly know, oh, I'm in 6 leagues, and in 2 of these, here's the 2. Instead of going to all 6 and checking for a certain player, looking at rosters, looking at the free agent listing, whatever, you can quickly see. And that's, like you said, increasing your exposure to situations like Breida or, any running back that's all of a sudden they're going to be the number 2 before the week, which means if there's an in-game injury, all of a sudden you could be sitting on a guy that could be worth a 3rd-round pick that was worth nothing before, or somebody that you're going to stream the next week, or someone now you're officially interested and glad that you picked up. But yeah, that window of inactives, this was a pretty big and brutal and impactful week. But every week, there's always some wrinkle about a guy being more iffy or a game time decision. Maybe it's a later start, and on Sunday you just start hearing that drumbeat that they are going to be questionable. Could be the Odell Beckham one is the one that gets me, just to say one last name, that it's they might be a little iffy, but things are sounding optimistic, let's say. And then they do the scratch on the warm up on the field before the game. That's the one that's really a killer. And it's really a killer for the non 1 p.m. starts, the the early games, because you can absolutely miss it. You might just be hanging out with folks. You might be casually watching some games, passing through, the room that it's on, doing other stuff, whatever. And you may completely miss the later game inactives or Sunday night or whatever with a late scratch. You got to be on it. You have to have at least an ecosystem of people that are going to text you, and help you out. You've got to have, some alert with a Twitter follow. The Footballguys news is going to be up on top of it, that page as well. So a reminder here that that for the Footballguys premium subscription, I've mentioned it before, but the online league dominator that you're going to want to use in season, but all the articles, right away, you're going to get, you mentioned Tyson Williams, talking about a lot of the fits. Matt Waldman does a great feature, thousands of words every single week on some of the biggest players and biggest topics for him to dive into on a weekly basis. That's out early. That's out Monday. A lot of weeks. You got Sigmund Bloom, who goes over the waiver wire. That sinks right into your leagues. And I use it all the time. You just click on it and it shows you who's available from his giant master list. And it also recommends a bidding procedure in your leagues based on who else is available. So there's a lot of things that set you up for success early on, in addition to all the great features like projections and recommendations and centric articles. I do a Dynasty feature every week. We do roundtables. So all of that is still going to be available to you, but the action plan advice early on in the week to manage your teams is the true game changer. So in this episode, we talked obviously about the 49ers depth charts at running back, the Ravens depth chart at running back, talked again about Justin Jefferson, a little bit about Aaron Jones, Corey Davis, big fan on the show of Corey Davis. And again, just how to optimize, how to think about your teams, talked a little bit about trade calculators as well. I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues. Let it rain.